G'day ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Draw with Jazza. I'm Jazza and this is a video tutorial on isometric art. Isometric art is a form of visual projection in which we can convey visuals in a little bit more of a structured way than the common sort of perspective view. Now, using perspective view, I've created this shape and we're going to be kind of exploring this through the beginning part of the tutorial to demonstrate a few of the different visual projections that are common. So three of these most common visual projections are, on the left we have perspective, and that was, as I said, the one that we just used. Then in the middle here, we have isometric, and we're going to go into detail as to why this one's a little more used for things like game design and game art. And then on the right, we have oblique. So I'm just going to go very quickly into each of these and just explain very roughly what they are before we delve into isometric. Perspective has points of perspective. So I did a tutorial on this. There is 1 point perspective, 2 point perspective, 3 point perspective. This image in particular is a 3 point perspective image. Oops. So as you can see, the lines kind of follow a direction which leads to a point somewhere off in the distance. Same with all other faces, or not faces, I should say edges of this shape in particular. It's just hard to draw a straight line. There we go. So you get the idea. So that is how perspective is made. We branch out from certain points like that. Okay. Going to the right, we have oblique. Now, an oblique projection is where the front most facing part of the image is completely flat. So as you can see in this, we have all the front square edges are 90-degree angles of a square. And so it's not on a weird angle, and then going out from there, things are on a weird angle. Now, there are standard angles for isometric and oblique. I believe oblique is 45 degrees or something like that. And I see oblique most commonly in things like instruction manuals. So, for instance, when I was putting together a mate's barbecue, the illustrations of the barbecue and where to put bits in where, they're either isometric or oblique. They're very mechanical looking drawings, and you need to be able to follow them quite simply. So every single angle going out from here should be that same angle that they have here. So if I select this, copy and paste, and bring it over here, you'll notice it's the same angle here, and so on and so forth. Then finally, we have in the middle, and what we're going to be going into now, the isometric projection. Now, it's a little more versatile because we can change the angle here, and we can have on either side different angles as well. For this tutorial, we're just going to keep it as even. What I mean by that though is, as with oblique, these angles are applicable everywhere in the image, but it's not, there's no flat front facing face. Now this is just for simple projections. So they're not complicated shapes. This is a fairly simple sort of shape. But whatever this degree is here, it might be 25 to 30 degrees here. I think 30 is the average. It's, again, same as oblique, consistent throughout the image. So now we're going to explore a little bit more about isometric projections and why we use them for game design. Now, I'll just cover very roughly in summary in the beginning why it's used for game design, because quite frankly it's very consistent. So with oblique images, first of all, the perspective of the oblique projection is a little warped. It doesn't look as natural as an isometric image. Okay, so you know, complicated shapes like houses or cars drawn in an oblique view don't look as natural as something drawn in an isometric view. So that's one of the main reasons isometric is more popular for things like game design. The reason why we don't use perspective is because we have 3D, and if the game is using 3D, we use 3D engines, because to do 2D art in a perspective sort of view is really tricky. Trust me, it's like, I haven't seen it done well before ever. It's extremely rare. So now, the second thing I'm going to talk about in regards to isometric images is the versatility of angles. So, in this example, I have a low angle, a medium angle, and a high angle. And what I mean by that is if I draw a line that connects to the base of one of these squares, the angle here is less than the one on this one. And then finally, this one is quite a high angle. Okay, so that's a low angle, medium angle, and a high angle, right? So these, as you will see in just a moment, make quite a difference to the presentation of an isometric image, and yet all are completely usable in the same contexts. You just want to keep them consistent. You can't mix low angles with high angles. It's all got to be completely consistent using that one angle the whole time. So we're going to draw that same shape that we had in the sample here. So if I just start sketching with, I'm going to go 2 squares wide and then 3 squares long. Okay, and then I'll draw a height here. It's a bit higher up the back. Okay, so something you can do is if I next draw these 2 lines, right, to get that shape going, I can select that angle here. In fact, I can select all of this, copy and paste, and drag it up to the other edge, right? And you can see how all I really have to do is connect these lines. Oops. And we've got that shape finished. So those angles have to be consistent. If it's even slightly out, it throws the whole thing off. So same thing at a medium angle. Let me just draw this here. So 2 across, 3 long, and then let's just keep this pretty fast and simple. I'm just going to select this, copy, paste it here. I don't need that back line. Then I draw my connecting lines. Oops. Across. So the taller the angle, you can see how already it makes quite a difference. So for different sort of games, we have higher isometric angles. Now, there are lots of games that use isometric angles. Diablo and Baldur's Gate, those sort of RPGs, quite popular. The first Sims game, I believe, used that sort of isometric view. I'm not sure if it was proper isometric or if it was 3D. Copy, paste, drag this across here. Okay. Now I'll do the line work for these a bit later so that in the reference file they've got the line work. But for now, I'll just use this dark grey. Whoops. I'll keep these red because I think it's quite nice having them as clear. Alright. So there we go. We have a low angle, a medium angle, and a high angle. Now I tend to go for something between medium and low angle because it's a little more like you're part of it. It's not too distant feeling. But that's the basic sort of different approaches you can take. So as you can see, there's a bit of versatility. And if you plop a little person in here, oops, like this, all of a sudden he's got terrain to move around on. So you can see how an isometric viewport for a game makes a lot of sense. So the last thing we're going to do is using this grid here, just draw a couple of isometric objects just to demonstrate how that might be done. So the first thing I might draw is a house. Second thing I might draw is a, let me think, let's go medieval because I like medieval. So I'm going to, excuse me, I keep doing little weird inner burp things. I'm going to draw a medieval house. I'm going to draw a tower, like a castle tower thing. So I'll do something with a little more cylindrical. And I'll draw a cart that's leaning. So we're going to talk about how we can do these things with different angles and things on an isometric view. So a house is going to be quite easy. So we find the dimensions that we want to follow. So let's say this, we'll go for that many wide and long. I'm going to just copy and paste, and in the same place I'm going to drag it up to about how high I want the house to be. And see how simple it is because it's using the same angles. I can just reuse the same lines. Okay. Now, to find where the middle of the roof is, I can't just do that. I mean, while it might work, if you want to do proper isometric artwork, you've got to find the right, angles and places to go. So what I tend to do is I find the middle line between these things. So if this is 3 squares long, I go halfway, which is 1.5 squares in. and I draw a line straight up. Okay, so then I find exactly how high I want the roof to be. So that will be the height. And then I can just draw the connecting line. And all of a sudden, I've got the angle of my roof properly figured out. I can just copy and paste it, put it over there. Oops. And there we go. That is the basic setup of my house, which I'm going to move over here. Okay, so now I can add features like the door, window, and now this is medieval, so let's add a bit of texture to the roof, bit of a chimney, so I'll have this pop out a bit. Now remember, even for little thin bits like this, if it pops out, we use the same angles, like that. Bring the chimney up, same thing for the square top of the chimney, using the right angles. And we have the thatched roof. Like that. Okay, so this is our medieval house. Just do a few medieval lines. And I'm pretty happy with the result. It's really simple, but you get the point. So I'll do the line work later after I've done the sketches of these, and I'll fast forward through that so you can see how I do it. So the next thing I said I was going to do is a bit of a tower. So to do a cylindrical object, first of all, I'm going to draw the side of the tower. So that is how tall the tower will be. I'm going to copy and paste that line, let's say here. Okay, so I want it to be the same height, top to bottom, but because it's cylindrical, we're actually going around like this. Okay, so we're not following the grid per se, we're just kind of getting a feel for what a cylindrical shape would look like. All right, so now I can select those lines, and same thing as before, we need these to stay the same, especially if we're going cylindrical. It's going to be more obvious. Well, that's not true, it won't be more obvious if it's out of place, but it will still be very obvious if it's out of place. So I'm going to just copy and paste that up to the top, and I can erase that inner cylinder line. And I'm going to paste it again and drag it up slightly above my other cylinder line. And I'm going to use that as a guide to draw another circle, slightly bigger, and start doing the shape of the outer bit. Now this is a bit too high, I'm going to drag this down so we have a bit more space. Okay, so to do this, I'm going to do a bunch of teeth, so to speak, on the tower, like that. And these are going to follow the isometric shape, but it's going to be harder to do because they're actually tapered inwards. So this is where your innate understanding of shape and perspective and all that kind of count for a lot. You've got to have a bit of a brain for it, and the only way to get that really is to practice. So just keep trying, and I mean, another great way is to look up lots of references and see what they're doing, and mimic that, imitate that in your own art if it's stuff you like. So there you go. So I've got the tops of those turrets, of the turret, I should say. There we go. And then we have the castle door. Now, keeping in mind that if this was art for a game and I have a little character that is going to walk around, this is my temporary little character, so you can see what I'm talking about. I need things to look like he can access them, right? So you want things to be about the same size and height so that they represent the world properly. So if I have this character here and he wants to walk inside this castle, I need the door in a place that will be accessible. And in this case, it would be here. Okay, so now I can add my window here, another window here, and another window here. So I'm quite happy with that, and you can see exactly what I'm talking about. The last thing that I'm going to draw is a cart. Now, like a horse and cart. Now, if I was to draw a normal cart, it would just be a box like this with a bit of height. Right, and it's got the two handle things tipping out like that, and the wheels, right? kind of like that. So if that is the basic shape of my cart, the problem is this is standing upright as if it were connected to a horse, but we're going to be drawing one that isn't upright as if it was connected to a horse. So I'm just going to move the castle out of the way. We're going to move it over here. I'm going to just draw the cart on the other side here. So this is my reference. This is, I'll find the size that I want. Now, this is where things get a little trickier, because it's going to be on an isometric angle, but it's not going to be following the grid. So again, we're going to be using our intuition quite a bit here. So while we know the rough width and length and all of that of the cart, which at this point seems to be about 1 wide and 2 long, I can begin by drawing the 1 wide, but the 2 long are going to be tipped up like that. Okay, see how we've already got an angle on top of that angle, right? So we close off that square. Now the next bit isn't going to be straight up, okay, because that makes it look like that's the proper shape. Because it's tipped, it's going to be angled slightly like this. Okay, so see how that straight up line, it's just a bit askew to that. Okay, so then we draw the sides of the cart. Okay, then we draw the handles, and then we draw the wheel. Okay, so you can see how, while it's a little trickier to figure out, it's still quite doable. We just got to have a bit of a feel for it. So in context, that cart makes a lot more sense than the other cart. Now the size is a bit out, so I'm just going to shrink it a bit and bring it directly under it. Oops, and I'll have my little arrow pointing down. But they are just a few key examples as to how I would go about doing isometric art for a video game. So it's quite a fun process, I'll be honest. It's a different way of doing art to sort of side scrollers or platformers where things are a little more, you know, just drawing characters on the side or things like that. It can be very tricky because you've got to draw things on a lot of angles and you've got to have a really good understanding of shape and form and all of that. But if you have that understanding and you enjoy it, it can be really cool. So I'm just going to fast forward through the rest of this video, just me drawing in this scene so you can kind of see how I'd go about doing the line work and then the painting for that. So I hope you enjoy that, and then that'll be the end of the tutorial. So I hope you enjoyed it, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for joining, and until next time, I'll see you later. Thanks for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoy my videos. You can download the reference files from this tutorial by clicking the link in the description. And remember to share any art, animation or game you make on Newgrounds.com. Until next time, see you later.